Hello, this is Jason. We are reading Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen, Chapter 7 to the last chapter. I hope you like it and subscribe. And let's get on to it. Chapter 7, Fighting in the Sky. In June 1943, the 99th FS moved into a new base in Tunisia. Tunisia is a country to the east of Morocco on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. Here, the men were given their first combat sorties. Combat is another word for battle or attack. A sortie is any time a military plane takes flight. One of the main jobs of the 99th FS was to protect other American airplanes on missions. Large planes called bombers carried explosives into enemy territory and dropped them there. Bombers were slow and heavy. They were easy targets for the enemy's small, faster fighter planes. That is why each bomber was protected by a group of its own fighter planes. The 99th FS and other pilots would form a ring around the bomber. This was called an escort. Each pilot would keep a lookout for any trouble. The fighter planes would fight off enemy airplanes. They made sure the bomber reached its target safely. Fighter planes battled enemy fighter planes in dogfights. Dogfights could be confusing. There might be more than one enemy plane on the attack. The enemy could be coming from all directions. They could even attack from above or below. By the middle of the First World War, special mounts allowed pilots to put machine guns on their planes. A machine gun can fire many bullets quickly. A pilot only has to aim and pull the trigger. In World War II, machine guns became standard on every plane. The Red Tails flew propeller-driven planes. A propeller is a fan-shaped blade on the nose of the plane that spins to move the airplane forwards. Some of the Germans were flying new, high-powered jet airplanes, which were much faster. However, the German jets were hard to turn, so American pilots in propeller planes learned to make tight turns in the air to get behind an enemy jet and fire at it. US fighter pilots also learned to point their airplanes towards the ground and swoop up at the last moment. This was called a dive bomb. An enemy jet would not be able to pull up as fast as a propeller plane. The jet would crash into the ground. On July the 2nd, 1943, the 99th FS escorted 16 B-25 bombers to attack a German airfield in Schleswig. Tuskegee is an island off the southern tip of Italy. The mission was a success. As the planes turned to leave, bullets ripped the air. German fighters were attacking from above. In an instant, 2 of the Red Tails were destroyed. Pilots Sherman White and James McCollum were the first men of the 99th FS to die in action. There were chaos in the skies. The remaining Red Tails dodged and spun. They fired back at the enemy, protecting their bombers and fellow fighters. Charles Hall swooped behind one of the enemy fighter planes. He fired a long burst from his guns. The German aircraft lurched, then fell from the sky. Hall was the first black pilot in the US military to destroy an enemy airplane. After the Red Tails shot down a second enemy plane, the Germans pulled back. The fight was over. The Red Tails escorted the bombers back to their home base. On the return trip, Hall did a victory roll in the air. Later, another airman drove 15 miles into town to get a large block of ice. The ice was used to chill the precious bottle of Coca-Cola. Hall enjoyed this prize in the shade of an olive tree, where it was a bittersweet victory. The Red Tails had lost two of their own as well. Chapter 8. The Cost of War. 352 Tuskegee pilots served overseas. 68 died in combat or went missing in action. At least 3 Red Tails came close to ace pilot status. 31 were held as prisoners of war. On December 29, 1944, LT Robert Friend was in his plane, returning from a bombing escort mission in Germany. He had reached Italy and was flying over the mountains in bad weather. When his plane started to have trouble, it was very hard to see. Friend knew he had to bail out, but he was afraid to do it over the ocean. You end up in the water. You don't know which way is up, Friend said later. He also risked flying right into a mountain. Friend couldn't wait any longer. He parachuted from his plane. He ended up tumbling down the slope of a mountain. He hurt his leg, but he was alive. He lay on his ground with his parachute tangled all around. Suddenly, a woman appeared with a knife. Friend soon found himself surrounded by local villagers. They were all holding weapons. "Help! Help!" he cried out in Italian. The people stopped. They looked at him closely. Was he an enemy German soldier? Not with that American accent and light brown skin. "You're lucky you were not speaking German," said one of the men said. "I'm lucky you can tell the difference," Friend replied. Friend was soon returned to his home base. He was given another plane, which he flew until the end of the war. Other airmen were not so lucky. Alexander Jefferson was shot down over France. He had been on a mission with other fighters to destroy a radar station on the coast. Jefferson parachuted out of his airplane. The pilots did not see him escape. His parents were told he was killed in action. In fact, Jefferson had landed in the trees above the very men who shot him down. Jefferson was sent to a German POV camp. PO is short for prisoners of war. He was told he would have to share sleeping quarters with another American prisoner. He was surprised to be chosen by a white man from the South. He had the deepest southern drawl imaginable, Jefferson recalled in an interview. The two men would have avoided each other back home. But the man was worried that other white prisoners might not really be prisoners at all. They could be German spies when it came to guessing who was American. The white soldier could trust black men. Soon, another white American prisoner arrived in camp. The man had been a Bomber 17, bomber crewman. He was very impressed when he found out that Jefferson was a Red Tail. "If the Red Tails had been with us, we'd have made it back home," he said. The man's show of respect made other white soldiers treat Jefferson differently in the PO camp. They began to see him as an equal. There would be another 9 months of war before these prisoners of war were set free. Until then, they were all Americans together. Chapter 9. Target Berlin. In the 99th FS left Tunisia for new bases in Italy. By October 13, 1943, enough cadets had graduated from Tuskegee to form more squadrons. The 100s, 301s, 302nd Fighter Squadrons combined with the 99th as the 332nd Fighter Group, FG. The Red Tails were earning a reputation as great flyers. They were dependable and stuck to their job. Not all pilots did. Some were more interested in becoming aces. They would chase down after enemy fighters, hoping to get it down. Doing this left their bombers dangerously unprotected. Lt. Cole Davis made sure his men did their duty. The Red Tails always stayed with their bombers. They protected the bigger plane and earned a new nickname, the Red Tail Angles. On June 25th, 1944, the 332nd FG was returning to base. They spotted what appeared to be a German destroyer in the harbor at Tuskegee, Italy. A destroyer is a large warship capable of firing torpedoes underwater at other ships and shooting guns into the sky to bring down planes. When the ship began to fire on them, the Red Tails moved into attack. It was believed that destroyers were too big to be sunk by small fighter planes, but the Red Tails had been told lots of things weren't possible. They never let it stop them. The planes fired at the ship in a series of passes, capped. Wendell bullets hit true. The big ship burst into flame. Lt. Dream Pearson followed behind with a spray of bullets. The ship exploded. Later, these two men were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for their impossible accomplishments. The U.S. Army Force was made of many moving parts. The 332nd FG was one part of a larger group known as the 50th Air Force. On March 24th, 1945, the 50th Air Force went on a mission to bomb Berlin, Germany. It would be the Red Tails' longest mission yet. The city of Berlin is the capital of Germany. During the war, it was the heart of the Nazi government. Usually, bombing raids on Berlin were carried out by British pilots in planes coming from the west. This time, the Allies planned on surprising the Germans by sending American planes north from Italy instead. The Germans would not be expecting an attack from this direction. The target was the Daimler-Benz tank assembly plant. The factory built armored tanks. It was extremely well defended. Anti-aircraft guns were protected the plant from the ground. The airspace was patrolled by the best German pilots. These pilots would be flying new Me-262 jets. The new jets could fly up to 100 miles per hour, faster than the American Mustang P-51. The 50th Air Force knew about the faster German jets, so it gave its bombers more fighter plane escorts than ever before. The Red Tails were determined to show their worth. They were assigned to escort the 3 lead bomber planes into Germany. They would protect the bombers above the factory. They were also expected to bring every single US bomber safely back to Italy. 169 B-17 bomber planes launched that day. 258 fighters joined them. The droning planes darkened the sky above the Daimler-Benz plant. The German anti-aircraft guns around the plant began firing. Many bomber planes missed their targets. The bombers couldn't aim well. They were too busy trying to avoid the enemy guns from below. The sky was soon filled with smoke. Suddenly, 3 German jets attacked. The Red Tails and the fellow fighter pilots engaged in a series of dodge fights. They did their best to hold off the jets until the bombers had destroyed the factory. Mission accomplished. 8 German jets were shot down by the Mustang pilots. The hundreds FS took out 3 of them. Never before had the 50th Air Force shot down so many jets in a single day. Sadly, 14 American bombers were lost in the battle. The 332nd FG lost 5 of its fighter pilots as well. 93 men of the 50th Air Force never returned home from the raid. The price was high, but the mission was a success. The 332nd FG was awarded a Distinguished Unit Citation for its good work. Their bombing run was the only one to hit the target dead on. They had destroyed the Nazi factory and crippled the German army. Chapter 10. Double Victory Denied. On May 8, 1945, the Nazis surrendered. The war in Europe was over. About 2 months later, the US dropped the first atomic bomb on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Japanese army surrendered. World War II was over by mid-August. The Red Tails were going home. They looked forward to being cheered along with the rest of the returning soldiers. In an interview with the New York Times, Lemuel Cutis said when the 99th first went over, the general impression was that the Tuskegee flight program was an experiment. Now I think the record shows that it was a successful experiment. Black people could fly just as well as white people. They had the right stuff. Unfortunately, the Red Tail soon would see that even though they were war heroes, the US had not changed its treatments to black soldiers. Just that April, Red Tails officers had protested at Freeman Field in Indiana. They were angry because there were 2 separate clubs for officers and they were not at all equal. The one for white officers had a game room with ping pong, billiards, and tables for playing cards. It was the next to the mess hall and even had its own fireplace. The club for black officers was a tied room with a couple of tables and a coal stove for heat. The black soldiers were arrested for protesting. The army eventually closed the white club rather than allow black people to use it. There was a public outcry, however, over the arrests and the unfair situation. The army held a military trial called a court martial. It wanted to punish the soldiers for protesting, but the War Department had to admit that segregating clubs were unfair. The army made new rules that allowed for integrations on military bases, but these rules were not always followed. The black soldiers were moved to another base where they received better treatment. The action helped pave the slow roads to equality in the military. But when the Red Tails returned home from Europe, the men stepped off military ships onto American soil to be greeted by signs that said, "Collared to the left and white to the right." What kind of welcome was that? Had nothing changed at home? Didn't anyone know of the Tuskegee Airmen's brave service? During the war, black newspapers had eagerly followed the missions of the Red Tails. Papers such as the Chicago Defender and the Pittsburgh Courier thought their accomplishments would result in a better life for and fairer treatment of black people in the US, but white people didn't read black newspapers. The Army Air Force even made a movie about the black pilots. Wings for This Man gave a wonderful look at the heroism of the Tuskegee Airmen. But the film did not play in theaters with white audiences. The Red Tails were famous only in black communities. After the war, commercial airlines would not hire a pilot of color. In the South, black war heroes still had to sit in the back of the bus. Even 20 years later, the Red Tails' deeds were mostly unknown. The daughter of the Tuskegee Airman told her college professor about her father's service. The professor said, "That can't be. There were no black pilots." Some of the Red Tails were angry at being mistreated. They left the army. Some never flew again. Others continued in the military and as pilots. They kept working for the second part of their double victory, equality at home. Then in 1948, something big happened. Harry S. Truman was now president of the U.S. Remember, it was Truman who had promised Dale White and Shawnee Spencer to help black in aviation in 1948. President Truman passed a law desegregating the U.S. Army. Black and white soldiers would now train and serve side by side. This was a huge victory for the civil rights. Thank you for listening. This was Jason Yu reading Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen. I hope you like it, and let's end it.